up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's recap and review Real Housewives of Orange County. This is season 19, episode 14. Girl, Gretchen, that was so cringy. like, oh, that was so bad, girl. Like, you are really flopping right about now. And I did not see that coming for you. I did not, Gretchen. I actually thought you was gonna have what's the call, a prodigal return, but that's not the case. But let's get into this video. So y'all know sometimes before we get in to the review, we get a little spicy, just a little bit. Well, I did a standalone spicy corner. If you're interested, I'll put the thumbnail on the screen, as well as the link to that video will be in the description box below. I talked about this clip of Vicki basically saying that Bravo needs to pause Heather, as well as we talked about the seating chart that I hate. Okay. And we also talked about the women being on the after show. So if you're interested in my thoughts about that, please go check out that video. Again, the link will be in the description box below. So let's get into the review. All right, y'all, so let's get into it. So the episode opens up and we get a preview of the conversation that we see later on in the episode between Katie and Tamra. And pretty much it gives us all these like flashback scenes to pretty much show us how we got here, where you have the women, i.e. Emily and Heather, during the slumber party admitting that they don't trust Tamra. Then Tamra finding out about it after Emily tells her at the spring fling event and her freaking out about it, to Emily telling Tamra, I would be pissed if you go and speak to Katie. Then to Emily tells Tamra at the, Gretchen's tactical defense class about the whole her banging somebody in the recording studio, and then Gretchen and Tamra getting into it real bad. So pretty much Tamra tells Katie she just wants to get down to the bottom of it. She wants to know the truth. So we then see the screen goes black and it says 24 hours earlier. And we see a situation where we see this meetup between Gretchen and Emily. Emily is clowning Gretchen's like attire in the confessional, being like, where does she get these outfits and why is she always dressed like she going on the Oregon Trail? I'm not gonna lie, that got a laugh out of me. I hate the way like Gretchen dresses because it seems like a costume. Like Gretchen to me dresses like a 1950s housewife living in Alabama during segregation. That's what it gives. Even down to how bleach blonde her hair is, it just gives that. Like, I'm like, girl, why are you cosplaying a 1950s housewife during the 50s, during segregation, living in Alabama? And I'm saying this as someone who lived in Alabama for 4 years. Like, it gives that. Like, I have met women who look exactly like Gretchen, but like they live in Alabama, you know? And I'm like, she don't give California to me. Like, even with the whole like Stepford Wives stick, like Gretchen doesn't read like a Jen or a Tamra where it's like your tits on a stick, big boobs, no curves, no nothing. You do have the bleach blonde hair, but you are always kind of like scantily clad in a situation, like you're showing a lot of titty. And she don't really give that. But I digress. So, Gretchen says in her confessional, she likes to wear like girly things. And I'm like, girl, this confessional again reminds me of Darla Dimples from Cats Don't Dance. Big and loud. It's gonna be big and loud. Ooh, that is one of my favorite movies. That I used to watch that movie so much as a child. But pretty much, that's what she looked like to me. Honestly, if a drag queen was wearing what Gretchen had on, I would eat it up because I would think it was campy. But her wearing this and being so serious about it, I'm like, I don't like it. I don't like it. So we see them in this, what's it called? This clothing store called like the Lucky Seven or the Lucky Cowboy. I don't know. It looked like an Urban Outfitters to me. But basically, they're in there to get cowboy hats. And we see the owner. The owner ends up asking Emily, like, what's the purpose of you guys getting these cowboy hats? Because they make the cowboy hats there. Emily says she works with the Innocence Project. We found out about that last season. And she was like, they're throwing a line dancing / like cowboy fundraiser for one of the exonerees by the name of Anthony, Anthony, who we met last season. And Anthony, unfortunately, was convicted of attempted murder wrongfully. And I think he almost spent like 14 years in jail or prison for it. So now Anthony wants to turn his life around. Yeah, because I mean, his life wasn't in a bad place until he got wrongfully convicted. So I don't know if turn your life around goes for that, but pretty much he would like to go to a mechanic school, and I guess the tuition is $38,000. So they want to help him raise them funds in order to go to school and not have to worry about it, which I think is a worthy cause. And we also see a flashback of when Emily went down to the Innocence Project headquarters, and one of the people that worked there told her, like, there's estimated about 100,000 people that are in prison right now, incarcerated, and they did not do the crime. Like, it's not because of a technicality or like sentencing issues. They legit did not do the crime. And so Emily says that working with the Innocence Project, even though she does not practice law anymore, gives her a pathway to be still connected to law, but in a humanitarian way. There's no way I would go to school as long as it takes to get into law school and not be practicing. I would find some type of way to practice. Because that degree is going to get put to work, okay? So we then end up seeing Gretchen and Emily sit down, and they start talking about Tamara's spring fling. So Gretchen was like, "How did it go?" And Emily was like, "Girl, it was a disaster. It was a ish show. Like, it was horrible." And Gretchen is like, "It was that bad?" And she was like, "Yeah, girl, it was bad." So then Emily tells Gretchen, like, "You remember when we were playing those games at the slumber party with Heather, and one of the questions was like, who do you trust the least?" And me and Heather said, "Tamara." Well, I told her that, because I wanted to let her know so we could have a conversation. And girl, she is pissed at me. Like, she was pissed all the way off at me. So then the scene switches, and we now see this meetup at this restaurant between Gina and Tamara. Tamara is acting all melancholy, like she's so hurt. And I'm just like, girl, get over it. Like, I really don't have that much sympathy for Tamara, because it's like, you have done people dirty. You really have. And like, this one situation, and I think what's also stopping me from having a lot of sympathy for Tamara is her every 5 minutes threatening to quit. Because I would be like, girl, quit. Like, leave. Like, I'm sick of you saying that. So we see Tamara hug Gina, and Gina asking her, "How have you been?" And Tamara basically says, "I'm sick, and I'm sick of this. Like, I'm sick of this." And Gina's like, "I know you're over it." And so I think in the confessional, Tamara basically says she got too much stuff going on in her life, and it's been very difficult. She was like, "My best friend is fighting for her life." And I just saw that it looks like Teddy is in remission. So, congrats to her. We hope it stays that way. And she also says Sophia is going to college, and she was like, "I'm emotionally drained." And she was like, "I feel like nobody really cares about my feelings." So then they show us a flashback of Tamara screaming at Emily now, like at her house after the spring fling party was kind of over. Like, all the women had left, but I guess Gina had stayed behind. And she's just like, "Nobody cares. Nobody cares." And I was like, girl, calm down. And you got Gina trying to console her and be like, "Hey, we do care." So then Gina tells Tamara, "The way that you reacted last night, it gave me flashbacks." And they flashback to season 19. And I think this is the season that Vicki and Tamara got fired. I think this is their season. Or maybe it was, or maybe it was the season after this. No, I think this was the season that they got fired. I do think. And Tamara was in the bushes, and Gina was trying to get her out of the bushes with her tape in showing. And Gina's like, "Can we talk about this? Like, can we talk about it?" And Tamara's like, no, we can't. And so Gina was like, "I remember that time you were dealing with something very emotional and very stressful." And so she's just like, "I want you to know that I'm here for you." So in the confessional, Gina basically says, "I know that Tamara she's not always right, But she was like, currently she's going through something, and I can tell that she's struggling, and I want to let her know that like you're not alone and you have people there who care about you. So then Gina basically tells Tamara what Gretchen did in LA was like she was out of bounds for that. Like she had no right to do what she did, you know? And she was like, I can see now that it's not just like she's trying to paint this narrative that it's just you doing things, but no, it's her doing things as well. And so Tamara ends up saying like, yeah, like it's at the point where I'm like, enough is enough. And so um Gina ends up saying, I understand right now you feel like really overwhelmed and you feel like everyone's ganging up on you. She was like, I can understand you feeling that way about Shannon, Jen, and Gretchen, but like Heather and Emily loves you and Heather always has your back, even when you're wrong. Heather really rides for you. But then Tamara says, but to say that she does not trust me or they don't trust me, that's really hurtful. She was like, how can you say that, but you say you love and care about me? And I'm really hurt by that. And it's like, I just want Tamara to get over it. Like, because it's, and I think that the hard thing about it for me is like, I understand how she feels in a sense of like, yeah, it would hurt to hear that people that you consider friends don't trust you. But then I'm also looking at Tamara like, girl, you're not dumb and you have seen your behavior over the past 14 years. People have every right not to trust you, lady. Like every so right. The scene shifts and we go back to Gretchen and Emily. And Gretchen basically is like, oh, this is typical Tamara. Anytime you try to confront her or have a real conversation with her, she runs away. And Emily was like, well, yeah, she did walk away from us about 5 times last night. And they actually give us a montage of Tamara walking away, looking into the camera saying, this is the last time I'm going to film. And honestly, if I was working on production, I would just draft Tamara her termination papers because there's but so many times you're going to threaten to quit. Like, girl, do you want to be here or not? like I would get so irritated with that, you know? So the conversation continues on and we hear Gretchen in the confessional pretty much say, this is what Tamara does. She's a typical narcissist, somebody that drops bombs. And then when you question her about what she has done, she tries to gaslight you and play victim. Now we did see Tamara try to gaslight Heather and Emily last episode, but it didn't work. And then somehow, some way she turned into the victim. Now, do I think Tamara is a narcissist? I don't know. I feel like we throw out the word narcissist so like people just like to throw it out, not understanding that narcissism is like a personality disorder that needs to be diagnosed by somebody with a license, and not everybody is a narcissist, girl. But I do think that Tamara does like to gaslight people, and she can be very manipulative. Now, if that's I know that's a part of being a narcissist, but that doesn't make her a narcissist to me. So the conversation continues on, and basically Emily was like, she was also mad at Heather because Heather agreed with me and Heather told her she agreed with me. So then the scene switches back over to Tamara and Gina, where Gina basically says, I think you guys just need to talk. You have valid points, i.e. Emily and Heather and Tamara need to have a conversation. We then see Heather pull up. She says hi to the table. Tamara ignores her. And so they're sitting down and Gina basically says, I feel like you guys really need to talk because you guys are legitimately friends. Like, y'all are legit friends. And so Heather basically says, I can completely understand why you're upset. She was like, listen, I love you and you are my friend. So then Tamara was like, how am I your friend when you have admitted that you are afraid of me and you don't trust me? So she was like, why would you want to be friends with me? So then Heather basically says, well, I told you why I felt that way about you. And then Tamara ends up saying, don't be condescending towards me. And Heather's like, I'm not being condescending, but she's like, every time I try to explain to you about how I'm feeling and why I feel this way, it's like my explanations are never good enough. So then Heather says in her confessional, like, Tamara can't dictate how I feel. She's like, anytime I try to be honest with her, she's always getting mad. Like, what type of friendship is that? And I think that's valid. I think it's valid for Tamara to be like, why would you want to be friends with me if you're afraid of me and you can't trust me? But it's also valid for Heather to be like, well, girl, I have tried to explain to you my feelings about why I said I'm afraid of you and I don't trust you. But every time I try to say something to you, you get mad which further proves why she's afraid to share her feelings with you and why she don't trust you, Tamra. That's why I'm not understanding why Tamra is acting this way. Like, she just wants to be a victim at this point, because people are telling you or trying to explain to you how they feel, and yet and still you're just not trying to hear them. Okay? So then Heather says, like, how can I be friends with somebody like that? So Tamra ends up saying, it's the fact that you guys said all of this in front of Gretchen. Now, I did tell y'all Emily and Heather were wrong for having that conversation in front of Gretchen, because we know Gretchen is Tamra's, her main op. And it's like, yeah, I would feel some type of way too if y'all were having this conversation about your feelings about me and you did it in front of somebody that you know don't like me. Like, that would piss me off, because you're giving that person ammunition against me. So Heather ends up apologizing, saying, I'm sorry that we hurt you. And then she goes on to say, but she was like, I never said that what Gretchen did was right. She was like, I told Gretchen, you're using Slade conveniently to do your dirty work. Like, I didn't agree with it. And so she was just like, I hope you know I didn't agree with her behaviors and her actions. And then Tamra ends up saying, I appreciate you apologizing and everything. It's just going to take me some time to get through this. So then we get back to Emily and Gretchen, and you hear Emily telling Gretchen, then Tamra did something that really bothered me, where she says she wanted to meet up with Katie. And it's like, now all of a sudden Katie has credibility, because you have issues with Gretchen. And Gretchen is like, so now she believes Katie. And so she's like, yeah, that's wild. So then in the confessional, Emily is like, why would Tamra seek out Katie, somebody who we know is a pathological liar, somebody you yourself said you don't trust? Like, it's all BS because she wants to prove this narrative about Gretchen. So, she's like annoyed at this point. So, because Gretchen ends up asking Emily, what did you say to Tamra? She was like, I told her I would be pissed off if she went and met with her. And Gretchen is actually surprised that Emily told her that she would be pissed off. So then next thing you know, the conversation starts to get a little heated, okay? Because Gretchen ends up asking Emily, so when did you tell her all of this information? And Emily was like, I told her when I got there. So then Gretchen was like, oh, see, you're the problem. You're a shit stirrer. And Emily was like, I do not agree with your assessment about this situation. So then Gretchen was like, well, yeah, Emily, you do be like stirring the pot, because I had no ill intent when it came to Tamra's song. And she was like, even when Slade said, like he brought it up about her sleeping with somebody, I did not, I wasn't cool with that. I even was like, no, I don't believe that. So then they flash back to when Gretchen is like chastising Slade for bringing up about the music, saying that it frustrates me that you brought up that situation. So then Emily was like, no, girl, you brought up something defamatory about her. Like, you did that. We did not bring that up. And me and Heather wanted to listen to the song, but we just wanted to listen to the song. We didn't care about the whole, her potentially sleeping with somebody in the studio. So then Gretchen is like, well, no, let me show you something. And so Emily's like, what you doing? Pulling up articles in a podcast? And Gretchen was like, well, yeah, because you're saying what I said was defamatory, and that's not what it is. So then Emily was like, girl, you and Tamara are the same. Like, y'all pull out articles, y'all pull out podcasts and all of this stuff. Like, y'all are the same. Y'all are the same. And Gretchen is like, no, we're not, Emily. Like, it's like, no, we're not. She was like, it's not true. We're not the same. So she was probably trying to pull up that All About the Truth article that we read in a Spicy Corner about Tamra and this storyline and things of that nature. But Gretchen is yelling at Emily, saying, Emily, you need to take accountability. And Emily's like, girl, for what? Like, what am I taking accountability for anything? You participated in this. You're the one that brought this up. And then Gretchen was like, well, you were encouraging me to play the song. And Emily's like, yes, to play the song, not to hear whatever y'all were talking about. So then Emily gets heated and she's like, you know what? I'm not talking about this with you anymore. I don't want to talk about this with you anymore. I'm done with this. And so she storms out of the clothing store. And I do feel like Gretchen is trying to blame everybody else but herself. You're the one that said she banged that man in the studio. Then they were like, ooh, call Slade, because they wanted to hear the audio, because you said there was an audio of her singing. They weren't even harping on Tamra banging somebody allegedly in the studio. They were harping on the fact that they wanted to hear the audio. And it was proven when Slade said what he said about the whole situation. And Heather was like, I don't care about that stuff. I just want to hear the song. So I don't understand why Gretchen is trying her hardest not to take accountability, but then is yelling at Emily to take accountability. But you won't just own up to the fact that you brought this to the show. Again. So the next thing we get is Jen and Shannon with the pet psychic. I don't care about this scene. All I got from this is that Willow, Jen's dog, is fat as hell and needs to be put on a diet. Like, that dog at most is probably only supposed to be at least like 12 to 15 pounds. And that dog look every bit of like 25 pounds. So I can only imagine the health problems that dog has. Shannon might be buying Archie a brother and that he worries about her. That's about it. And he poop a lot. You know? So then we get this scene of Tamra and Katie sit down. So we have Katie and Tamra meeting up at this bar. They greet each other. They both ask how have they been doing. And they both say, I've been better. Katie ends up saying now that it's been some time since the situation, she's been able to step back and like really analyze what went down. And she really feels bad for what went down. She says, you know, what hurts her the most is what happened with her and Jen. And Tamara was like, is it because she didn't stick up for you? And she was like, yeah, I was hurt by that. She then goes on to say that Jen did reach out to her, but she didn't pick up the phone. I think she said Jen reached out to her like once or twice. And she's just like, it's been a lot. And she starts to say, like, you know, this whole entire situation has made her very emotional. And then she says, you know, I've been the odd man out so many times. And then Tamara responds by saying, and I'm the odd man out right now. And so basically says, like, I really do feel bad about what happened. Like, I swear to you, I do. And so they flash back to like the whole blogger situation when they confronted Katie at the Hot Pot event and it was let out that she did contact the blogger. So then Tamara says, well, you know, an apology goes a long way, Katie. And Katie's like, well, I've tried to apologize to Shannon, but she don't want to hear it. So she was like, I don't want to hurt nobody anymore. And you hear Tamara in the confessional basically says, I know Katie has done some messed up things, but I don't think she's like a psychopathic liar. So I'm willing to hear her out and hear what she has to say. So then Tamara said, you said that Slade called Matt and said something to the effect of, we can't talk about this. So then it flashes back to when they were at the lie detector test event that was held at Emily's house. And pretty much we do see Katie saying, Slade even called Matt and said, don't share this. And so then Katie basically says, Gretchen lied and she said you drugged her. She said, and Slade said, tell Katie, stick to the story. Tell her not to waver. That's the nail in her coffin. So this is the information that Katie is saying Slade told Matt to tell her. So Tamara is gagged. Like, she's like, wait, like he really said that? And she's like, yeah, he did tell us that. So then Katie says Slade's exact words were, she has to stick to the story because it's a legal issue. Now, Katie, girl, you allowed yourself to be bamboozled if that was Slade's exact words. Because if it was so like legal, why did you tell Kiki Monique? Because I do believe that Katie told Kiki Monique. I do. And then you're not going to get me to believe no different. I do believe Katie told Kiki Monique. But I could see Slade saying it was a legal issue because we do have Matt saying in an interview that Slade was on the phone with Alex Baskin. And if you don't know who he is the executive producer of Real Housewives of Orange County, as well as Beverly Hills and Vanderpump Rules. So I'm guessing that was like a scare tactic, because I would be like, why would you think Alex Baskin would be reaching out to Slade and Gretchen when they just got back on the show? But then again, when you're green to this type of stuff, it is what it is, especially if you think you're gonna get in trouble. So she was like, I thought I was gonna get in trouble. And in the confessional, Katie is just like, you know, I was like, oh my gosh, like, This is crazy. She also says, I realized that I was being lied to, and that the root cause of this tornado of chaos is Slade. He's the eye of the storm, like the true eye of the storm. So then Katie pulls out her phone and she shows her text messages where she says, I told her, i.e., Gretchen, I literally told her I will not share what you shared with me. So then they show her text messages to Gretchen, and we see Katie in the blue saying, I will, she was like, I will swear on my life not to bring this up. And then Gretchen responds to her saying, hey, love, sorry I missed your call earlier. Try calling you back, getting on a flight in a little bit. And then, Katie responds to her saying, hey, girlfriend, tried you, call me whenever. So I will say that does, like, this story is tracking with Katie, because why would Katie say, I will swear on my life not to bring that up? Why would she have the need to say that to Gretchen if not she was protecting Gretchen in the story that, Gretchen told her? And Tamara ends up saying, like, was he trying to shut you down? Meaning Slade. And Katie was like, correct. So he was like trying to cover everything up, but it is what it is. Like, at this point, I don't want to protect them anymore. So Katie was like, he does her dirty work. He does all the talking. And then Tamara was like, well, yeah, she always does that, where she allows him to talk. And then she's like, oh, don't say that. Don't do that. So she can remain clean in this situation. So Katie says that Matt was pissed and pretty much was like upset because all of a sudden Slade stopped talking to him. And Katie has said this several times. If you check out my spicy corner, Katie talked about this in the after show, where Slade was like always in the mix and always contacting Matt. Like, she even said that there was one time where Slade called Matt and told Matt that Gretchen wanted to talk to Katie, and Katie ends up talking to Gretchen on Matt's phone through Slade. And she was like, he was just always talking to us. And so Katie was like, he was calling all of a sudden and then he stopped talking to us and it went completely silent. So Matt called him up again and said, hey, I'm going to reach out, told Katie, hey, I'm going to reach out to Slade, ask him if he wants to have a sit down man to man so we can hash things out. And she was like, he never responded, pretty much. And so then Tamara was like, he's not a man, he's a douchebag. So man to douchebag. And Katie's like, yeah, pretty much. That's what it is. So then Tamara basically says, I really thought that me and Gretchen had moved on, but like, she's still out here making up lies about me and talking about me nonstop. Now, it is starting to look like there might be some truth to what Katie was saying, that Matt did get a phone call from Slade, and Slade did tell Matt to tell Katie to hold the line. Now, if she produces the receipts, because we already got her showing us an actual credible text message that fits the story that she's telling, Gretchen, you gonna be in hot water. Because Katie, even though I do think she's a liar, she didn't. It's looking like she didn't really lie about this situation with you, girl. So the next thing we have is of Heather. They're in LA. We see Tamara, Gina, and Emily. And we see Heather is pretty much doing a fundraiser for the Trevor Project. If you don't know what the Trevor Project is, it is a hotline for teenagers or young adults who are dealing with, a crisis, potentially unaliving themselves. And it's more geared towards students or kids that are like LGBTQIA, but they also offer services for children that are straight as well or heterosexual. I Googled the Trevor Project because I was like, I feel like I heard of this before, and I kind of have, but I remember that the project was created because of a movie that came out back in, I think, 1998. That's when the project was founded. And the movie that started it was about a boy that was 13 years old, and he came out to his friends. They rejected him, and he decided to attempt to take his life. And in what I read on Wikipedia, they basically said that the people who created the movie, we actually see one of the people that helped make that movie and is one of the founders of the Trevor Project. Her name is Peggy. That they thought that, like, maybe if a child saw this, they would maybe be able to relate, and they should create services for them. So that's what they did, and I think that's wonderful. We find out that Heather has been working with the Trevor Project for the past 10 years. We also see that she's really cool with the CEO by the name, I think it's Jasmine. And so she's just like, this is an organization that means a lot to her. They're doing this whole cookie thing where you can buy these limited edition cookies. The cookies look nasty to me, but it was like a chocolate chip cookie with like cream cheese icing, sprinkles, and a mini Oreo on top. Honestly, they could have just gave me a macadamia nut cookie and I'd have paid for it, because that's one of my favorite cookies. I'm very simple when it comes to cookies, okay? You ain't got to do a lot of razzle dazzle for me to eat it. So she was just like, this is just something that is very important to me. You can see Emily getting emotional because she talks about, as Heather is giving her speech, talking about how as a mother, she has 4 kids with many different identities. She's a fierce supporter of the LGBT community. She was like, my kids are accepted, but she also understands that not every child wasn't blessed with that. She gives a statistic that actually surprised me, that I was like, oh my goodness, where she said every 45 seconds a LGBTQ youth or a queer youth decides or tries to take their life, which I was like, wow. And so she was like, it's important that we pour into projects or organizations like the Trevor Project to help these children and let them know that there's more to life than what you're feeling right now. So she's like, donate and things of that nature. Emily's getting emotional thinking about children who don't have people to rely on and who are not seen and who are not loved. And she actually was like, this is wonderful that Heather has decided to be a part of a program like this and really back it and help those who need help. We then see Emily, because the scene shifts, we see Emily at her house getting ready for 2 exonerees that are a part of the Innocence Program with the director of the Innocence Program. So I hate that I did not get the names of the 2 men that we actually meet, but they actually give us their stories, And so Emily's like, could you share with us what you've been through? So one of the guys is Hispanic. He talks about how back in 2000, he was convicted of like a shooting in Los Angeles, but he was actually in Rancho Cucamonga. So he was like, how can I be in 2 places at once? And he said, honestly, they pretty much like poked hole in my story of like me being innocent and I got convicted. And that's messed up because how can he be in 2 places at once? And that was his alibi, bro. He was in Rancho Cucamonga. So I'm not understanding. Okay. The system is racist, okay? So then they talked to the black guy that was there, and he talks about how he was convicted, I think, back in 2006 for first-degree murder that happened in Los Angeles, but he didn't do it. And he was like, he went to prison for 20 years. I said, my God. And I think the Hispanic guy went to jail for like 14 or 15 years. The first time he held his daughter was when she was 3 years old. Emily's in the confessional being like, if you want to torture me, take me away from my kids. And the black guy talks about how, he's just grateful that being in jail didn't break him. He also says, and I can tell like it didn't break him either. So then Emily starts to get emotional, and then she starts to realize that all the stressing she's been stressing about when it comes to Luke ain't that serious when she's looking at these men who have really been through some real rough, hard life changes. And she's like, at least I get to see my kids every day, and I should be grateful for that. So I said, all it took for you is to speak to these 2 men to know that you need to calm down, something that Shane has been trying to tell you this entire season. I said, that's mighty convenient, Emily. So it's now time for the Innocence Hoedown, okay? We actually see Anthony, the guy that they're doing the fundraiser for. I thought the little balloon, saloon type doors was like really a cute setup to take pictures. We see all the girls getting ready. Gina thinks her man look hot as a cowboy. We found out that Ryan wants to wear jorts. Ryan needs a makeover. We then settle on this scene of Slade and Gretchen, and they're trying to figure out what to wear. And Gretchen ends up saying she hasn't really spoken to anybody in the group other than Emily and Jen since the whole blow up that went down between her and Tamara at, the self-defense place. And she's just like, I don't know how it's about to be. They flash back to when Tamara got in her face and was like, "Rrr," at her, going off on her. And so Gretchen is like, I wonder if Eddie's going to be there tonight. And so then Slade was like, well, let me tell you this. None of the men really respect Eddie because he allows Tamara to do whatever she wants. And I'm like, does y'all's respect mean anything to Eddie? Because if it don't, then I don't think, like, then why do we care? But he's basically like, none of the men respect him because she's always, meddling in other people's marriages. So we start to see people pull up to the Innocence Project's fundraiser. Ryan look a mess with this white bandana around his neck. Like, I just, like, you couldn't get a black one or a brown one. It's just, oh my God. Jen talking about her and Ryan are Cowboy Barbie and Ken. No, you're not. No, you're not. So then we see Emily is just happy that Ryan dressed up because she was like, Shane, all he got on is a plaid shirt and some Vans. He ain't want to be a part of the theme. We then see Tamara pull up, and Emily is so happy to see that she came to the party. We also see Elizabeth, who I forgot what season Elizabeth came in. She was the one who was talking all about her glasses. These are this much glass. My glass, like, she was always about them glasses, okay? Or maybe was that the other lady? No, I think Elizabeth. No, Elizabeth was on Orange County and not Beverly Hills. Yeah. We then see Gina and Trevor get there. And so everybody is asking, Emily, what's the purpose of this cause? And, Emily explains to them, we're trying to raise money for Anthony. And then Tamara was like, how many people are convicted in jail who are innocent? And Emily was like, honestly, the statistic is mind-blowing. Like 46%, meaning that's over 100,000 people in jail who are wrongfully convicted and who are roughly serving 14 years in prison. And she was like, you can't get that time back. Like, money just doesn't. Emily basically says money doesn't take the place of all the time that you lost. And she's absolutely right. We then see Terry and Heather get there. Terry looked like a pastor to me. Like, if you watch old Westerns, he was given that he reads, the Bible before, they take the men to the gallows in the rundown Western town. So Heather ends up saying he looked like Mr. Kentucky Fried Chicken. And then we find out that was Terry's first job. And then all the girls are mingling, talking about how cute their outfits look. And then Gina's getting annoyed about how all the girls are trying to talk to Travis. And they're like, ooh, girl, they really feeling Travis over there. I'm not going to lie. At first, I thought they was exaggerating. And then when the camera panned and it was 3 girls around him and they was laughing, I said, ooh, Gina. Maybe Travis needs to dress like a cowboy more often. And so now Gina is like, I need to seriously think about locking up my man and get these bitches away from him. Because, y'all not going to sink your spurs into my man. So we then see, as the party is continuing on, we see Shannon pull up to the party. Everyone is like, oh my gosh, Shannon, you actually stuck to the theme. And everyone likes her jacket and her outfit. We then see Emily have a conversation with Jen, where she pretty much tells Jen, girl, I had a conversation with Tamara the other day, and guess what? She told me she met up with Katie. And Jen is like, oh wow, she really did? And she was like, yeah. So then we see a flashback to when Tamara and Emily actually had the conversation. And Emily says in her confessional, I tried to have a real conversation with Tamara. So while they were at the Trevor Project situation fundraiser that Heather was throwing, we see a conversation take place between Emily and Tamara. And what it boils down to is Emily basically tells Tamara, I think we have a great relationship, but I don't trust you. I feel like if you ever get really mad at me and I tell you something in confidence, you're going to hurl it and throw it at me, which she's not wrong for feeling that way. Tamara basically says that makes her mad. And she's just like, well, that's how I feel about this situation. So then the conversation continues on. And that's when Tamara lets it be known that she met up with Katie. So then Emily tells Tamara, well, you're mad at me for telling you I don't trust you, but then you meet up with someone that I told you I would be pissed with you if you did meet up with them, proving my point as to why I don't trust you. And I said, well, you kind of got a point there. Okay. So then Emily says in her confessional, Tamara just looks bad to me meeting up with Katie, because you're only meeting up with Katie because now she conveniently fits the narrative that you have about Gretchen. And I mean, like, Emily's not wrong for thinking that way. So we then see the ladies have, like, they're in this huddle, and Tamara basically tells the group that she met up with Katie, or someone, no, I think Jen says, oh, I heard you met up with Katie. And Tamara is like, yeah, I met up with Katie. So then you hear Heather say, hey, can we have a conversation over here? So then it's this conversation of Heather, Shannon, and I think one other person. It was Emily. I couldn't tell what they had. And so Shannon is like, how can you waltz like over here all again? Like, you know, the other day you were saying I quit for the second time, and now all of a sudden you're okay and you meeting up with somebody that you said was a liar. And I was like, yeah, Shannon, you got a point. You got a point. Tamara's antics are getting old. So then Jen is like, how do you feel? Like, did you get what you need from speaking to her? And then Tamara was like, yeah, I feel like she validated what I needed her to say. She was like, she told me some things about what she said about Slade. And then Tamara basically tells Jen, I mean, I don't really feel comfortable telling you about it because you're so close with Gretchen and you don't really understand or want to hear about what's been going on between us for the past 12 years. But yeah, I got the validation I need. So then production ends up asking Tamara in the confessional, why is Katie so credible now? Like, what about Katie is credible now? And because previously you didn't believe her. And so Tamara basically says, well, I feel like as more time went on, I started to rethink the things that Katie said. And she said, also, I'm starting to feel like she was telling the truth because no longer is she sticking up for Jen and Gretchen. So, like, she doesn't have a reason to protect them anymore. So while Tamara is saying that in the confessional, we then see Slade and Gretchen pull up. And you hear Tamara talking to Eddie, basically saying, I feel bad. Like, I don't want to talk to either one of them face to face. I just want to be as far away from Gretchen and Slade as possible. So we see Gretchen making her rounds, saying hi to everybody and things of that nature. So we find out that after Emily and Gretchen got into it earlier in the episode, 5 minutes later, they were able to work out their issues a little bit and pretty much move on from it. And so she's like, we good to go. And we actually see a flashback scene of them. And she said also she need Gretchen's money to help Anthony. And I said, okay, at least you understand what the cause is about. We actually see Emily tell Gretchen about Katie and Tamara sit down. And she's surprised. She's like, what? Like, so what happened from her saying that she don't like her, she can't stand her, to now all of a sudden she cool with the lady, and it's only because she has intel on, like, she somewhat has intel on me. And then Shannon's like, because she's obsessed with you. And I'm like, girl, no, y'all obsessed with each other. Okay, it goes both ways at this point. We then see Emily get on stage, and she introduced Anthony. She thanks everybody for coming. Anthony says some kind words, thanking everybody for being here, saying this is a humbling experience. By this time, when they're on stage, they have raised $15,000, which I think is wonderful. Halfway to his goal, because if you remember, his goal is $38,000. So while he's up there, he's just like, you know, I want to turn my life around and I want to be able to take care of my mother. So Gina is like, this is such a wonderful cause. So she was like, how can you not help? So then they start line dancing. I suck at line dancing. I need more than 10 minutes to learn a line dance. You need to give me a day or two. Okay. So we find out that Gina and Travis are going to donate $5,000 through the gated group that they do with real estate. And then Terry decides to match the $5,000. Gina is like, don't try to take my moment, Terry. Okay, don't try to steal my moment. And then she also shades the fact that they're that they didn't like increase because, you know, Terry and Heather have so much money. But I'm like, them matching $5,000 is still a big deal, because to drop $5,000 and you're not hurting for it is a blessing, you know, is a flex and a blessing. So I was like, Gina, shut up. So everyone's having a good time at the party. We then see this interaction between Jen, Ryan, Gretchen, and Slade. And I've noticed that Jen is very messy. Like, she is very messy the more she's around Gretchen. And I'm like, girl, you might want to back away from her because she going to get you caught up. Okay. So we see Jen telling Gretchen that, you know, I haven't really spoken to Tamara after what happened the other day. But she was like, she talked to me today and she brought up your name, like something about you. And she points to Slade. So then Gretchen was like, it's always something about Slade. It's always something about Slade. We actually see Tamara talking to Elizabeth where she was like, I can't stand Gretchen and her fake self. And Elizabeth actually co-signs it. So then we see Gretchen go over to Shannon and basically tell Shannon that she and Slade are going to go talk to Tamara about the information she knows about her. Don't do that. Do not do that. Don't do that. Like, you need to go over there by yourself. And Gretchen was like, well, no, she's talking about Slade, so Slade can have this conversation with her. And everyone's just kind of like, no, girl, you shouldn't do that. The only person that's kind of like okay with it is like, you can tell that Jen is trying to have Gretchen's back, but also in her facial expression, she looks uncomfortable. She looks uncomfortable. So everyone is just like, this is not a good thing. We see Heather and they're like, Heather, do you know she going over there with Slade? She was like, they just zoomed right past me. And she was like, this is very intense. So then Heather's in her confessional saying, I feel bad for looking at this. Like, I don't think we should be watching this. And then Gina's in her confessional saying, I'm really uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. So then you see Gretchen and Slade walk up on to, what's her name, onto Tamara. And Tamara's like, no, I'm not doing this. And she walks away. And then Gretchen says, look at her run. And then Slade is like, why? So then as she's running away, you hear Gretchen say, run, B, run. Run for your life, B. And I'm like, girl, do you know how lame and corny you look? Like, you're doing this at a charity event for a man that was wrongfully convicted and spent 14 years in jail trying to turn his life around. Girl, that's why I say that whole Jesus thing is a costume, and you don't have no couth. Because why would you do that at a charity event? And she's like yelling, like, and then you yelled across, like, you wanted attention. You wanted to embarrass Tamara. Because I'm like, why are you doing this, Gretchen? And my thing about it is, I don't think it was wrong for her to bring Slade over there. Normally, I'm not the type of person that says that men and women can't have conversations because, like, I'm going to check you, whether you're male, female, or anything in between. Like, you say something to me, I don't care. But this moment, it was uncomfortable in the sense of, like, girl, you and Tamara and Slade don't like each other. Eddie doesn't like you. That is a hostile situation. And honestly, like, I don't have a man, but I'm just thinking about if I got into it with a couple and her man joined the conversation and my friends or my family were at a party with me, my family's pulling up. My friends are pulling up, and it's gonna get hectic because it gives that you came over here to be very aggressive. So I don't understand why Gretchen did that. That was such a stupid idea. Such a stupid idea. So Tamara's outside. She basically is like, we're leaving. She pulls Eddie. Eddie flicks them off. And she's like, they're trash. They're trash. She was like, her and Slade are classless. They're garbage. And I don't deal with people like that. And then Emily goes outside and she was like, I don't know why she did that. That was really aggressive. And she was just like, I don't understand why Slade always has to get involved. It just doesn't make any sense. And Eddie's like, because he's a little bitch. That's why he's always getting involved in things. And then she goes on to say, Tamara goes on to say in her confessional, if she was going to apologize to me, that's one thing. But all of that, what she just did was for attention. And I agree. So then inside of the party, like, everyone is pretty much chastising Gretchen for what she did. And Gretchen is taken aback by that. And she's like, how come Tamara can say whatever she wants, but Slade can't defend himself? And so in the confessional, production ends up asking her, I guess the question is really, Slade loves being involved in the drama. And she's like, no, he doesn't. Like, he doesn't like being involved in the drama. But, you know, if people are going to talk about him, then Slade has a right to speak his piece. And I'm like, he does. But also, you should be ready. Like, my thing about Housewives is the show is about the women. Why can't you wrap a girl up for talking about your man and read her down for filth to know to never speak about your man? Why do you need Slade to do that for you? Slade was Peter Thomas before Peter Thomas was Peter Thomas. Slade was the blueprint for Peter Thomas. So it's like, why is your man getting involved in the mess that does, like, I mean, it concerns him, but it's like, he didn't need to be a part of this conversation. And the only reason why I'm saying that is, again, they don't like each other. Like, Slade hates Tamara. Like, it could get real aggressive real quick. So I don't know why she did that. So then the last scene we see of the night really is Emily and Gretchen getting into it because Gretchen was like, you said we came off aggressive. And Emily's like, yeah, you came off aggressive, both of you. And I'm saying this as somebody who is aggressive. She was like, it was uncomfortable. And so then she was like, that was not aggressive. And Emily was like, it was aggressive for you to bring your man who's like 6 feet tall to talk to this lady. And so the next thing you know, like Gretchen gets pissed and was like, it's not about Slade. And everyone's like, girl, what is up with you? She was like, for the love of God. And then Emily starts yelling back at her because she's like, you're not going to yell at me. She was like, you brought your 6-foot man over there to have a conversation with her. That is aggressive. So then they're starting to yell at each other. And then Gina is like, what is she talking about? Like, what is she talking about? So then Gretchen is like, I can't. And then Emily's like, I don't want to yell at her because I'm not going to stop yelling. And that's not what I want to do. We raised the money that we needed. We find out that in the end, they actually raised over their budget and they raised $41,595, which is great. It's because it's well over what they needed, which was the $38,000. We then see Gretchen and Slade have a conversation where Gretchen is saying, Emily said that we aggressively walked over to her. And Slade was like, I'm happy to stay out of the drama if they stop talking about me. And then Gretchen says, I'm over it. But you're the one who made this situation the way that it is, Gretchen. Like, don't get me wrong. I know Tamara isn't a saint, but Tamara didn't bring up that she slept in, like, that supposedly there's a rumor out there that she slept with somebody in the studio. You did. You don't want to take accountability. Now you're trying to, like, rewrite history in this moment, like she's antagonizing you guys because she went to speak to Katie, but you're the one that restarted the beef, bro. How'd that work? But yeah, y'all, that's it. That is all. As always, remember to be bravely authentic. Definitely hop down in the comments below. Subscribe, and I'm out, y'all. Deuces.